Hey, mic check 1 2 1 2. Can anybody hear me in the chat? My brother Ed Moore, Black Gnostic Speaks. What's going on, brother? You're welcome to join this panel as well if you want to. This is open chat number 11, Alcoholism and Afrocentricity. Black Fire, what's going on? Yeah, you can join, man. You can join if you want to. Rainy Woman, good evening to you as well. Mega Montana, Mike Hamilton. I'm chilling, bro. How are you? Yeah, sorry I'm late, man. On Sundays I usually do volunteer work with solidarity groups on the ground here in Boston. So I'm kind of booked back to back on hangouts and on the ground stuff. So if anybody wants to join, put something in the chat so we can get you on the panel if you have something to say in regards to this topic. So we just chilling for this Sunday night. I think we talk a little bit more about what Afrocentricity is and some African news, and we'll see where it goes. I need some water. No one else is on the panel right now. So let me we got some links. We got some somewhat of a doc in the description beneath the video as well. Just some stuff I wanted to go over. He said, "Ain't no party like a brain trust party." I don't even know if you can call it a party, right? I mean, you would have like, what would a brain trust party really look like, right? A bunch of nerds with like harmonicas and xylophones and flutes and shit. Um, Suspenders and party favors. Let me check the email, Blackfire. I didn't see anything. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything. Anti-gravity said, "What's the topic today? Alcoholism." No, the topic is actually Afrocentricity. Um, And it's not really a dedicated topic. It's just that's just the title for right now. You say warfare, I say welfare.
What's going on, Mike?
Yo, what's going on, dude?
Oh man, dude. Sunday was a work day for me today, so I'm kind of burnt.
Oh, you're back on the grind again?
No, man, actually I got some scooter stuff happening here, man. I was on the phone with Noah earlier today, man. I think we've got our first rideshare network that we're going to start deploying out the rideshare software like on a large scale, man. It's just like a fleet of over, let's say, triple digits.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, man. So a pretty good day actually today.
Hmm. Now, is this branded on you under your label or is it black labeled? What is it?
So this is going to be so the fleet will be for the company, but because of the number of scooters, what we might end up doing is we may actually create like some different fleets out of this. And these fleets may be branded under different services and stuff. Um, the software side of things will primarily be us, right? We'll be operating this as a SaaS, software as a service. So we'll be on the IoT side of things, but we also have the opportunity and the ability to get involved with the hardware side too.
Hmm. All right, we got one additional person to the panel, so let me share my screen.
And I am going to run an errand here in a second, Mike, so I might just be muted for a bit, but I'm going to be listening in.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
All right, so first item on the docket: a Go Back to Africa media campaign uses AI to boost African American tourism. This is from Quartz.com. Go Back to Africa. A racist put down long used against African Americans, Africans, and other black people in North America and Europe has been getting a social media makeover. Black and Abroad, an Atlanta based lifestyle and travel company targeting black travelers, is reclaiming the derogatory statement with a new tourism campaign encouraging African Americans to indeed go back to Africa. The company recently partnered with FCB6, a data driven creative agency, to create an AI platform which collects real time social media posts of Black travelers throughout the continent. As vacationers post photos with the hashtag Go Back to Africa, the Google Vision fueled system scans faces for people of color and locations to select posts for the campaign's website. There, African Americans are encouraged to browse through countries to see Black travelers vacationing across Africa. This is a nice picture of a sister up here. That's dope. Promoting Africa as a desirable destination for Black people worldwide is not new. It's not a new one. The early 20th century saw the rise of the Back to Africa movement, a campaign galvanized by the Pan Africanist Pan African activist Marcus Garvey, who sought to transport African Americans to Africa in the hopes of acquiring greater social and economic independence. But for Black and Abroad, the social media-led campaign is an attempt to break an artificial travel barrier for African Americans regarding African tourism and in the process support African economies. We hope this campaign to create a pipeline where Black travelers can come to the continent and spend their money, says Eric Martin, co-founder of Black and Abroad. Aside from taking away the power in the offensiveness of the statement, the campaign has also been an attempt to capture the attention of African tourism boards on the potential of African American travel across Africa. According to the African Development Bank's most recent tourism report, the industry accounted for 9.3 million direct African jobs in 2017. The burgeoning industry, led on the continent by countries including Kenya, South Africa, and Tanzania, has also been a way to diversify each country's economy. But even as African American tourism to Africa has gained momentum in recent years with initiatives like the Year of Return, African Americans tend to discount African countries for vacation, says Kent Johnson, Martin's partner at Black and Abroad. Part of our work is educating them otherwise, he says, and that process includes seeing Black faces vacationing in unlikely destinations. The company has taken a group of African Americans on their first trip to Ghana this August for the Year of Return celebrations, marking the 400th anniversary of the first documented arrival of enslaved Africans in Jamestown, Virginia. So I think this is probably one of the dopest things I've read all year in terms of ADOS and technology and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I guess now that the new term or slogan is "send her back" or "send them back,"
Yeah.
send him back, right? I guess go back to Africa's free for use.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean I like the idea though.
Mm-hmm.
It's provocative,
Mm-hmm.
right? Go back to Africa, but when it's a purely Black driven initiative, right, to boost tourism, and you're kind of empowering, and it's not like the N word, but it's literally like a go back to Africa, as in like come visit the continent. You know what I mean? So I like it.
Yeah, we have been talking about Africa since we started this whole hangout.
It's kind of like one of our points, our talking points. Yeah.
Right, driving African economies and getting intertwined in those markets and stuff like that. This is a brilliant move, and the fact that they're using artificial intelligence, to me, is the icing on the cake. That's why I threw it on the docket. I thought.
Wait a minute. That isn't, but Mike, isn't that sort of like a perfect example of what we're talking about in terms of deploying AI for your benefit?
Yeah. And we just had a hangout, probably about a week or so ago, talking about the benefits of artificial intelligence and machine learning, why you need to learn it.
Yep. Yeah, this is right here is like a case study in what it is that we push when we say no, like get into developing it and deploying it. Now, I mean, we can give general specifics. I can tell you specifics about like, the IoT and the scooter stuff and how AI works with all of this type of stuff. But for tourism, for example, look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I mean, artificial intelligence for tourism. Like, who would have thought? Okay, well, hey, somebody was thinking.
But the next step is to create our own Airbnb on the continent, right?
And that's what you've been talking about, the whole international Airbnb model.
Yeah, myself and Jay Charles. For those you don't know, there's so many things that goes on behind the scenes on the Black Brain Trust. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Jay Charles and myself have been talking about this for a year now, or at least 9 months.
That's been about maybe about a year.
Just about 9 months, man. We've been talking about that, man. All types of ways to integrate yourself into the African economy from an ADOS perspective. And we had a whole hangout talking about AGOA, which is African Growth and Opportunity Act, which allows goods manufactured and cultivated in Africa to have 0% tariff in the United States. That's a part of this whole entire economic fourth industrialization of the continent, and where does ADOS fit in all of this? We just had a hangout yesterday talking about black women in automation and the impact of it. Here you have, you know, this new travel agency that's involved in all this stuff. It, you know, we've been on the money probably since day one. I don't think we've gotten anything wrong for the most part.
Not that I know of.
Yeah, we've been right a lot of the time, man. And when you start talking about micro transportation, scooters, and stuff like that, how you integrate micro transportation into, let's say, an Airbnb, right? What do they call that? A timeshare, right?
Yep. Yep. I have
You
business models. I have business models based on what you're talking about right now.
hmm hmm you
It's
know, you
all it
take.
all it all fits and it all works. That's what I mean. It's like it's kind of like for the venue that you're in, you know, to really think about how you can leverage things like AI and stuff like that for what it is that you do in terms of like a skill or a trade or a profession.
hmm Brother DE,
Hey D, what's going on? Hey Rain Woman.
Rainy Woman, how you doing?
Good morning, gentlemen. I was getting comfortable here, listening in, man. I just woke up and turned on my computer. How you guys doing today?
Good man. Good morning. Where are you at?
Right now, I'm in Manila. Getting ready to leave
Oh,
here in a couple of days.
okay.
Um, I like the topic, bro. I mean, it's what that article deals with something that's very important right now, and that like if ADOS people go back to history, they'll see that a lot of the African movement started in America. I mean, all they gotta do is look at Garvey, look at the Pan African movement, a lot of brothers here in America brought Africans here
hmm
and kind of like show them what's going on in the West against Africans in the West. And then these brothers go back knowing that Africa had to change in order to help black people in the West. So they went back home. A lot of them died. Yeah, a lot of them died. Most of those leaders who stood up died. So that was to keep people thinking that Africa is this backward place. And it's funny that while America was like the birthplace of the Back to Africa movement,
hmm
that so few Americans are actually so black Americans. When I say Americans, I talk about black Americans, black people are going to see what Africa is like.
hmm
And this is not the beginning because I've seen a lot of um, Americans in Africa. You know, a lot of them are yes, people who came from Africa became American citizens. They still have family in Africa going back. But I've seen I've seen Bajans in Africa, Mike. I've seen Trinidad in Africa, Jamaicans in Africa, Americans in Africa. You know, I see them all in Africa, but not in the numbers that I would like to see them. And every Italian know where he came from in Italy, and he was born in America. And say, you know, I'm Italian American. My family lives in Palermo. My family lives in northern Italy. Still eats Italian food.
hmm
I'm not saying that ADOS people don't have a tie to the land,
hmm
but man, if they don't start seeing that they need a man with a big stick saying, "Hey, you can't shoot. You can't. You guys can. You guys got to stop shooting ADOS people in America."
Oh, you
You
say
know?
they're saying ADOS have to stop shooting each other?
No, 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 no. When I say a man with a big stick, I mean Africa. Like the nations of Africa is like America. If an American gets shot somewhere in the rest of the world,
Mm-hmm.
it might happen once, and they say, okay, accident. 2 or 3 times, the American government step in and say, hey, you guys got to stop this foolishness. You can't be killing Americans like that.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody, which is going to be have to be Africa, let's stand up and say, look, you guys got to stop doing this foolishness to African Americans. You got to stop doing this to Brazilian people, black people in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
You got to stop doing this to black people in Europe. And we have to see this. We have to start looking at this. We have to start cultivating that travel, going and coming, creating friendships over there. Might not want to move there, but create friendships over there, create families over there. When I say family, I mean you adopt somebody and they adopt you, and that happens all over Africa all the time. Anytime you go there with the intention of enjoying yourself, somebody will adopt you. Somebody will give you a name. Somebody will give you a name and say you belong in our family now. And that's what people from not only America but Caribbeans got to do. You gotta get out of this mindset about how we are British. So people from the Caribbean gotta get out of the mindset that they're British first, and people from Brazil gotta get out of the mindset, but we're Brazilian first. No, you gotta get rid of that stupidness. So this article deals with a subject that is dear, close to my heart, and it's starting down a road that's almost like the ideal thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Rainy Woman, do you have anything you want to add to this conversation?
I think she might just be muted. Oh,
Oh
there she
yeah,
is.
yeah.
Young always mute. My mic does come on. Good evening, everyone.
There's a lot of feedback coming for you, Rainy Woman.
There's feedback.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of hard to hear you.
yeah, yeah. It sounds like you're in a barrel.
Let me see if I can fix that. Excellent.
All right, let me just go to the next article. I think we've established that this is actually a great idea from an ADOS perspective. All right, this one is from Bloomberg.com. Africa's working age population to top Asia's by 2100. Uh, try this again. All right, let me try this one more time. Africa's potential workforce will likely be larger than that of Asia by the end of the 21st century, as both continents wrestle with different demographic and economic challenges. The number of 15 to 64-year-old Africans today is a quarter of the size of Asia's working age population. By 2100, however, Africa will surpass Asia. A Bloomberg analysis of United Nations World Population Division data shows Asia will be confronted by an aging population, while the shift in Africa will be toward more youth in need of employment. So this is just a horizontal chart of the demographics between now and the next 100 years. We see it starts to scale up over time, and it's been scaling up for quite some time. So, and Asia starts to scale down, mostly because they have the one child per household policy that affected China as a whole. One caveat for African nations: a fast-growing economy typically requires a robust and growing working age population, and it isn't clear that economies on the continent will expand enough to provide employment for job seekers. Further, it's not clear potential employees will have the skills those jobs require. Nigeria's potential labor force is projected to rise by almost 350% or 375 million by the end of the century to more than 485 million. But the IMF recently highlighted substantial inequality in access to education by gender and between the rich and poor in Africa's most populous nations. According to a survey conducted by the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, a girl born into a family in the poorest fifth of society spends only about a year in school. As global supply chains reduce labor inputs with better technology and machines for even lower value added production, it will be difficult for young workers in Africa to find unskilled manufacturing jobs in the future, similar to those now employing Asian youth, said William Lee, chief economist at the Milken Institute. The number of available employees worldwide will rise to an estimated 29% to 6.5 billion from 5 billion by the end of the century. Africa's share will jump to more than a third, around 2,100 from almost 15% currently, according to Bloomberg analysis. The continent's working age population will grow by 2 billion to 2.75 billion in the next 80 years, while Asia's will decline by 415 million or 13%, the projections show. Most people overlook the fact that Chinese dependency ratio, the working age to over 65 population, is deteriorating rapidly and is already showing signs of straining. So we talked about this before. China's one child per household policy and the infant mortality rate that they do have in Southeast Asia. Globally, the total number of people aged 15 to 64 will peak at 6.5 billion around 2090, an increase of 1.5 billion from today. Nearly 80% of this gain is expected to come from low-income countries, with the remainder from middle-income nations. The potential labor force in high-income countries is projected to shrink as birth rates remain low. The demographic changes will occur in a relatively short period of time. In 2020, everyone over 65 will be supported by an estimated 7 workers globally, but by mid-century, the ratio will drop to 4 as the share of seniors increases. So we see on the chart, or at least on the map, I should say, that sub-Saharan Africa is going to have massive issues with age in relative to their surrounding labor force. That along with India. These shifts will create challenges for governments in a number of countries. Taxation, asset prices, and the use of resources will come under pressure, while innovations in artificial intelligence, machine learning, engineering, and computing power may cause trepidation about employment within many industries. A recent Oxford economics report estimates that 20 million manufacturing positions will be lost by 2030, with low-skilled regions hit the hardest. Oxford's economic econ, econ, economic. I don't know. I think that's a misspelling. Model economic model for that. On average, each newly installed robot displaces 1.6 manufacturing workers. About 1.7 million factory jobs already have gone to robots since 2000, including 400,000 in Europe, 260,000 in the US, and 550,000 in China, the report found. We just covered a report yesterday talking about women in automation, and they're dead on with this article because we're talking about how this would impact black women. The labor force in North America and Oceania will increase by close to 38 million and 17 million, respectively, while Europe will experience a decline of 137 million or 28%. The working age population in Latin America and the Caribbean will shrink by 15% or 66 million. While birth rates have fallen sharply in much of the developed world, migration has enabled the population in North America to continue growing. The number of working age men and women in the U.S. will rise 1.2% to 243 million by 2030, and then climb 14% to 278 million by 2100. The number of people in North America living longer than 100 years will soar to almost 1.9 million from about 1 million today. The two most populous nations also are aging fast. By 2050, China and India will account for 31% of total population and 39% of the world's seniors. Meanwhile, both will see their share of the global labor force shrink. India's working age population is projected to peak around 2050, but 40 years later, there will be fewer 15 to 64-year-olds than there are today. The shifts in China will come sooner. Its working age population already is shrinking and will contract by 27.5 million by 2030. So China is going to face some serious issues by the time Trump leaves office and a new president takes over. Massive issues. India's working age population is expected to overtake China's in 2027. The potential labor force in Russia, Japan, Germany, and South Korea also will be reduced because of the slow pace of births and migration. It's interesting that they bring up Russia, because Russia, Putin has I shouldn't say Putin, but the Russian Federation has a Russia to African conference in October, big conference. And one of the major problems that Russia has right now is a shrinking population for millennials. A lot of them are leaving. Some of them have faced early death and things like that, or I should say premature deaths for their males, especially. And what's happening here is they're not enrolling enough people into their Russian colleges and universities. And one of the key things that Putin is trying to do to tap Africa is to bring more Africans into Russian universities and colleges to fill those seats as a good gesture of diplomatic policy. Here are the three graphical views on the gainers and losers by country, where might workforce come from in 10 years. India is a obvious one. Nigeria, Pakistan, Ethiopia, Democratic Republic of Congo, and the rest of the world. So we see two of those major contributors will be coming out of the continent of Africa, or actually three of those major contributors will be coming out of the continent of Africa, which makes up for half of the equivalent percentile of what India has to offer. And then the five economies losing the most labor. So China is losing a whole lot. We just read that a paragraph ago. 2030 is going to be a disaster for China. They'll see some serious slowdown, especially with this trade war. And then you have Russia, Japan, Russia is an obvious one. Japan is an obvious one because of their aging population and lack of reproductivity amongst their Japanese herbivores, whatever you want to call those guys, those incels. Germany and then South Korea, which will probably happen more later than earlier than the former. All right. So that's the article. Anybody on the panel have anything you want to add to this?
Let me say something real quick. One of the things that I'm noticing, if you, well, a lot of people are noticing, not just me. Where are all the wars that you see being fought on the planet? You look at that map, you will see that it is either killing off or displacing the people that are actually going to be contributing to what are you talking about, this 30, this I would say 18
Mm-hmm.
to 64 working age people.
Mm-hmm.
In the area like you got a country like Israel, are killing off all young Palestinians. You got the French and their wars in West Africa, Central Africa, killing off young Africans.
Mm-hmm.
Sudan, the young Africans are dying.
Mm-hmm.
Congo, the young Africans are dying. All these young people that are that will or should participate in the economic rise of Africa are being pushed out of Africa, recruited out of Africa in case of America, or killed in Africa. And people don't see it that way. Even uh, America's two richest men are helping to kill off young African men. They're putting vaccines in Africa that are killing the babies, and nobody's talking about it. Very few people I've seen talk about that. So Bill Gates, with his so-called philanthropy,
Mm-hmm.
is actually taking out a lot of our young people.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing it here in America, and now they moved into Africa in the name of philanthropy. And we're doing something for Africa. French president are encouraging um, African women. We don't need African women having babies.
Mm-hmm.
That's his idea but Asia. If you look at Japan now is changing its laws so that they can import. They claim that they're importing workers, but most of the people that they're importing, the workers that they're importing, are female. A lot of them are coming from Philippines, Malaysia, places where the women are educated,
Mm-hmm.
places where women are getting educated. They're bringing them to Japan because the population is dying off, and they need to keep their population. All the This kind of frustrating to me when I see Africans falling for again for the rope of the trick.
Mm-hmm.
You yes, you got you have to work, you have to earn, and to they're seeing Europe as the place to go. Because of the wars that the Europeans are causing in Africa. It appears that Europe is the best place to go, so they're dying to get there. And those who can afford it are moving to America. But these people better start looking at Africa and its growth and start staying at home to build or going back home to build. Some of them are going back home to build. I've seen a lot of people say, you know what am I doing here in Europe? I'm facing this racism, I'm facing this, I'm facing this challenge, this challenge. Why not go back to Nigeria or Ghana and do my own thing? And they're doing that. Some of them I've talked to, actually, they own a business in London and they're building a business in Ghana or Nigeria.
Hmm.
So we gotta try to keep those young people in Africa. The other thing is that African Americans seeing this going on and seeing the need for young African in for young not African but entrepreneurs. Um, we gotta encourage them to say, look, and you just mentioned it just now that if you build something in Africa, you can import it into the U.S. without tax. You gotta look at that, and we gotta encourage our young children. Say, hey, there's an opportunity. Take it. You know, mom and dad is here. We can help you. You go over there, son. You know, you go over there, son, and start up something. And we're gonna be the anchor here, and you're gonna be the anchor there, and that's how we're gonna work it.
Hmm.
So we gotta do that. We gotta stop the brain drain out of Africa, and we gotta stop the wars from killing people in Africa. And then you gotta do it quickly because the technology is moving so fast that you can't tell what's going to happen 10 years from now. You know what I'm saying? You might have a plan for 10 years from now, but by the time you get to the 10-year mark, somebody already took your idea 5 years ago. So you got to use it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Super Triz. Um,
What's up, Paul?
we have yeah. Shout out to Paul Bryan as well, our brother up in there. Um, One of the things that you brought up about brain drain, I think the black community has a brain drain here in America too, right? We've talked about black men who are upwardly mobile, who have the skill set and have the wherewithal to sustain one idea could actually sustain a whole entire economy, a microeconomy within these neighborhoods, and those guys are being ran out. You know, like something that we've never seen before, and no other community seems to really do that. So when you mention Africa having, a bit of a brain drain, I think that's more of an environmental issue. But for people who claim ADOS and these hashtags, and more importantly, Black people in America, they seem to run out their brain power, chase them all out, and don't seem to understand the significant impact that's going to have over the generation. Paul Bryan, welcome to the panel.
Hey, Mike, DE, Raymond, how was everybody?
Good, brother. Good. What's good with you? Got anything you want to contribute?
Yeah, yeah, did you already cover the alcoholism piece? And am I that late? Uh-oh.
No, we haven't even touched on that. We were just gonna go through the articles, man, and just
No.
kind of pick up from there.
Okay, okay. Um, Brain drain. Yeah, I probably have a lot to say on that. So I'll just wait and I'll circle back around. But
Hmm.
really quick, um, I'd like to think we're all on the same page about the effects of the brain drain, but personally, I kind of have somewhat not counter, but just different views. So I will defer until later.
All right. All right. Let me get to this article right here. This one is from the Wall Street Journal. U.S. investment in African university fails as China advances. Unraveling of Ghana project sets back America's plan to counter China's growing influence in Africa. I'm not going to read this whole thing. I'm just going to read some of it. When the U.S. government's private investment arm teamed with New York-based real estate investor W.P. Carey Inc. to finance the expansion of prestigious university in Ghana, it was meant to demonstrate a novel for-profit funding model for developing projects in Africa. Instead, it left a wasteland of unfinished lecture halls, dormitories, and pile of litigation, and it marked a high-profile setback for government efforts, U.S. government efforts to counter China's growing investment influence on the continent. The project at the University of Ghana was a public-private partnership including the U.S. government's Overseas Private Investment Corp, known as OPIC, and W.P. Carey, owner of the New York Times headquarters. Launched in 2015, it was meant to provide accommodation for 984 students and facilities to teach science, technology, education, and humanities. OPIC provides loans and insurance for projects in developing countries. It usually partners with American companies, but some of the biggest American investors, including private equity firms KKR and Co. and Blackstone Group Incorporated, are stepping back from Africa, a priority region for OPIC in China. OPIC's partners in the Ghana project don't have a record of completing African projects. President Trump and Congress last year doubled OPIC's funding capacity to $60 billion. The goal to help OPIC compete with China's $1 trillion Belt and Road program to build infrastructure, including universities, railroads, and power plants worldwide. OPIC wants to build the greatest development force in the history of the world. Chief Executive David Bohegan said in a March interview, the agency provides alternatives to Chinese funding for Indonesian banks, Pakistani wind farms, Indian hospitals, Nigerian power plants, Middle Eastern private equity funds, and Vietnamese fish farmers. It has earned annual profits since 1974. But OPEC's reliance on private companies as partners means its foreign policy objectives must usually align with their profit targets. By contrast, Chinese President Xi Jinping has state-controlled companies and banks that are able to help enact foreign policy. Chinese investment in Africa is rising, more than doubling to $43.3 billion between 2011 and 2017. U.S. investment in Africa fell 12% to $57 billion over that period. In Africa higher education, China is racing ahead. It committed $671 million between 2000 and 2014, more than double the U.S., according to data from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development and Aid Data, a research group at the College of William and Mary. In November, China completed a multi-million-dollar university library in Tanzania. Confucius Institutes teach Chinese across Africa. African study in China, more African study in China than in the U.S. Interesting. So these are pictures of unfinished institutions that the U.S. failed to complete, and they wonder why no one trusts them. The Ghana project was meant to be the biggest expansion since the UK built the university in 1948 in its Gold Coast colony. It was touted as a model for the continent with the youngest population and lowest access to higher education. West African universities like the University of Ghana are unable to expand enrollment due to the lack of long-term funding needed to construct new academic facilities, OPIC said in 2015. This is contributing in part to the migration of educated West Africans to Europe and the U.S. American businesswoman Andrea Pizziconi started the project. She founded Africa Integrals LLC in 2008 to compete with Chinese developers. She hasn't yet completed a university project in Africa. W.P. Carey invested, expecting a high financial return to compensate for the risk. People familiar with these people familiar with the deal said OPEC agreed to lend $41 million and provide political risk assurance. The loan wasn't drawn. The announced cost was $64 million. Developers stood to earn more. They plan to lease the buildings to the university for 25 years for more than $600 million, according to a copy of the agreement. Tax breaks could have reduced the rent. Project documents show. Construction began in 2015, but the project soon unraveled. A new vice chancellor instead in 2016 opposed the deal and was quoted in Ghanaian news media saying it enslaves the university. Construction halted. The university and developers blamed each other. OPIC tried to intervene, but the project was terminated in 2017. Across campus, students can access a $37.5 million computer system. A Chinese company installed it with cheap funding. Export Import Bank of China provided a 19-year loan with a 5-year grace period and annual interest rate of 2% thereafter. Failure didn't prevent W.P. Carey from profiting. A London-based lawyer determined a $165.8 million termination fee for the aborted project in 2018. Instead of pursuing payment, W.P. Carey, which says it has a core principle of doing good while doing well, claimed a $45.6 million insurance policy from OPIC and Chubb, resulting in a gain of at least $10 million. Whether to enforce the termination fee is up to insurers, W.P. Carey spokesman said. W.P. Carey's conduct was extremely callous and disrespectful to every stakeholder, said Ms. Pizzaconi, who has offered to complete the buildings. They terminated the project that had the potential to educate hundreds of thousands of students over decades and left stakeholders, including Africa Integrals, with millions in losses, except W.P. Carey, whose outsized profit are matter of public record. This is interesting, and this this sort of information is why Africans are very wary of doing business with the West. I've had this conversation with many of the Black Brain Trust members, and I've spoken with people from the continent who are developers and architects and engineers, and they have told me behind the scenes, African countries would rather deal with Black people in America than deal with anybody else. The problem is that ADOS, hashtag or whatever you want to call it, Black people in America don't have themselves together enough to actually do business. Paul Bryant, you have anything you want to add to this?
Haha. Loaded question, so you throw it right in my lap.
Mm-hmm.
Whole lot to unpack. So, where do I start? So, from China with their Belt and Roads program, all right, I am absolutely clear that that is nothing but exploiting Africa for its resources. The difference is they are going about it in a different manner, because in this day and age, colonization and slavery are not viable. So instead of putting chains and shackles around arms and feet, you put chains and shackles around people's minds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when we talk about brain drain, so both over in Africa and even more so in America amongst Black Americans, so
Mm-hmm.
that I'm going to lightly skim. That is a multi-pronged issue, because the best and the brightest, if we're being intellectually honest, they are shunned by the majority of Black people. So, since they are shunned by the majority of Black people, the mindset amongst people that I've come in contact with and dealt with and being in the position myself is, well, if I'm shunned and you don't want anything to do with me, all right, these people tend to feel, what vested interest do I have? What impetus or motivation do I have? Okay, when the drug dealers and the athletes are celebrated as opposed to the best and the brightest, those who have the intellectual and financial capital and wherewithal. Now, cycling back to how America has and the West in general promises institution, promises infrastructure, and fails to deliver. All right.
Mhm.
Um, that's a huge problem. Amongst the Black Brain Trust, we have discussed this at length,
Mhm.
as you said many times. Myself, during the almost 2 years that I lived and worked there, Nigeria is top three in proven in-ground oil reserves. Every
Mhm.
oil and gas company around the world, they've gone to Nigeria, they drill wells, and they leave them on improperly plugged and capped. So
Mhm.
they leak, they bubble up, they contaminate the ground. So the farmers can't use that land, right? So that strategy, okay, has devastating effects because now you reclaim land for that specific purpose, but then by not developing it or only half developing it, see, it's there, but we've left. So now that land cannot be used for any other purpose. Okay, so that is an absolutely insidious, insidious uh, modus operandi of the
Mhm.
West. So now, so the in referring specifically to the individuals from Africa who have deals on the table, infrastructure construction deals on the table. It has to start with infrastructure. It's a massive, it's a massive ball of wax or a massive ball of yarn. The condition and issues in Africa. The overriding need that they need first is infrastructure. All right, I've seen this firsthand. So if the best and the brightest, those who have the wherewithal, could work with individuals like that and focus on infrastructure projects, then things could start there. Because I have to go back to what Tabo and Becky said about 20 years ago. He said, "You do not understand what it is to be a head of state and go before the UN and the World Wildlife Fund and the International Bank and the IMF with my hat in hand and beg because I cannot feed my own people."
Mhm.
On top of the other myriad of problems and situations among in South Africa and the every sovereign nation on the continent of Africa. So you know, it is. I hear a lot of platitudes given. I hear a lot of quote unquote simple solutions given. From a lot of people who've never set foot, who do not understand the true situation or the problems that need to be tackled first and how they need to be tackled in order. All right. But with all of that said, you know, infrastructure and education, it has to start there because without infrastructure and the education to change the mindsets and teach the self-sustaining skills, nothing will change on Africa. Absolutely nothing. So clearly the Western powers have zero vested interest in helping, as does any nation state throughout history. All right, nation states only help other nation states when it benefits them. So I'm clear on that. However, without without the cooperation, all right, of the African tech sector and Black Americans who have the wherewithal to do so, infrastructure and education are the key. If those two issues are not tackled first, you can forget about any type of change happening.
It's good stuff, man. DE, you have anything you want to add to this? Did you hear what we were talking about?
Yeah, I lost part of the conversation, but what I was going to say is that I've seen a few of these situations where I don't know if it's exactly as I'm thinking, but it looks to me like um, it like a deliberate plan. You know, you redirect. Um, I've seen it in Ghana and in Gambia too, where they had plans for a specific area of development, and they were getting, in the case of Gaddafi in Ghana, in Gambia, in order to stop it, they took out Gaddafi. So now Gambia had to turn to England, and England came in with a lot of rules and regulations that say, you know, you can't do this, you can't do that, can't do this. So now they're not at liberty to do the things that they want to do. They had to cut back the program to like 10% of what they wanted to do. You know, and I've seen this happening. Like, to me, when I look at that program that you're talking about, the university, it looked like somebody was sabotaging it. Because if the Chinese had come in and built the university, granted they would put stipulations in there, but it would be built. There wouldn't be no, you know, shenanigans going on. The project would be completed.
Mm.
That's my opinion.
No, no doubt. I think personally, I think it was an insurance scam to begin with. Why stop in the middle of a project that you're already 40% completed? What value does that really? How does that even make any sense? You know, what my perspective is that they had no intentions on completing it, because you could have completed the project and still and could have prorated the bill to the government itself or the institution itself. They would have figured out a way to pay for it. They either got it from the not United Nations, but the IMF or the ADB, which is the African Development Bank. Um, Somebody would have stepped in and helped pay for it. But it seems to me that this was never meant to be completed. It was meant to be an insurance flip. And it looks like they made out pretty well with 10 million over the substantial insurance payout. So that's a pretty good flip for them.
Mike, didn't we see the same exact thing after the Haitian earthquake? Bill Clinton walks on water for the majority
Hmm.
of black people still. And look at the billions that were run through that company through the Clinton Foundation. And black people still the Clintons walk on water for them. Okay?
And the money earned from that was used to fund Hillary Clinton's campaign against Trump.
Exactly. All right. So um I say that to what I just said to I could not agree with what you said more. All right, that was nothing but a money laundering scheme, a
Hmm.
shameless money grab.
Another reason why black people should, get an education in anti-money laundering (AML) and and cybersecurity. You would figure
100.
out a lot of. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Again.
No, I was going to say cybersecurity and actually auditing. Auditing is actually a pretty lucrative market. I know a few people who are auditors in the tech space as well as the financial space, and they make a pretty good living. Boring as can be, but they make a good living.
Exactly. Hashed you you cannot to borrow your line, Mike, you cannot hashtag your way through this. You can't. You have to take concrete steps and platitudes and emotional banners are going to accomplish nothing. All right.
Mhm.
Um, pick, Picking up weapons is not going to happen. All right. Law enforcement has more guns than you. The military has more guns and drones than you. That is not the way forward. And if you think you are fooling yourself. Therefore,
Mhm.
as I keep saying, you have to think your way through. All right. Education. You have to change mindsets. You have to raise the standards. Education and finance and infrastructure. Those are the ways forward. In order to build a high rise, you have to start with the foundation. Dem- Demolition and excavation, foundation, and then core and shell, which is your actual building, and then the finished work. It's the same thing, right? Education, finance, infrastructure, mindset. Those are the steps. That is the way forward. Anything else, you can hashtag yourself, or you can call yourself ADOS, pro black, back to Africa, poor libation, whatever. None of that is going to accomplish anything. You have to think your way through. You cannot emotionally act your way through.
We read an article yesterday, a report, I should say, that talked about um, the infrastructure is the investment. This is in the report. You can go back to the Hangout and check that. Check the report. It said that right in the middle of the body of the report that infrastructure as a barrier becomes an investment. We've been talking about this since last year that the infrastructure is the investment. So keep that in mind that we were talking about this long before that report was even printed last of this month of 2019. So
Right.
put,
Exactly.
put,
Exactly. I've been there. I've seen it. Almost 2 years lived and worked there. Yes, there are cities. Yes, there are high rises. Yes, it's modern tech, Wi-Fi, everything. Bro, you can literally go less than 5 minutes outside of a city, and you're on dirt roads, if they're even roads, no light poles, no electricity, no running water. This is what it is. People are literally getting on a bus to travel 2 hours just to buy groceries and come back. I say all of that to say infrastructure is the investment. Infrastructure, medicine, healthcare, finance, education, mindsets.
mhm.
I agree with you, Paul. It's if I were a multimillionaire right now, the three areas I are going into in Africa: education, infrastructure, and food production. I would be into transportation is one of them, and me, I would actually build, I would actually pay the teachers, help pay the teachers' salary to educate the kids.
Bro, one of the biggest things that it's not sexy, but drainage and irrigation. Okay, so as I've said, and I know really quick because Mike wants to get to the very next article. It's dry for most of the year in sub-Saharan Africa. So when it does rain, that's the rainy season. So the lack of drainage and irrigation floods out the lands. So now you can't farm the land. So then with proper drainage and irrigation, people would be able to develop, cultivate, farm the land year round. So heads of state do not even have the intellectual capital, much less the industrial manufacturing to make that happen. So I give credit where credit is due. It was Mike V who put the idea in my head. Infrastructure is the investment. Because after my almost 2 years there, I was like, no, there's nothing here. This is an untenable situation. But then Mike said, but infrastructure. And you know what? You're right. Because I came back saying the biggest problem is the lack of infrastructure. But that is the investment. Mike, I'm sorry because I know you want to get to the next article.
No, that's fine. I spoke about this with Dr. Phoenix and I think Hank Sigma and a couple other guys on the panel a couple weeks ago. That foreign policy of the United States should have been to push HBCUs into Africa, and you wouldn't have this issue of half built infrastructure projects for University of Ghana. You could have pushed Howard University, Morehouse, especially all over the sub-Saharan continent. You know, as newly built facilities and infrastructure, while having immense cultural influence, South power over the continent. That would have been an amazing feat, but we dropped the ball under the last president. So
I don't think he was there to. Well, I'm I'm personally convinced his
mm,
his role was not. was not to help black people. But that's, I digress. I'll leave that for at the end.
Mhm.
I agree with you, Paul, because see that article that Mike just read? He combined two US agencies that were supposed to be helping Africa and made it
Mm-hmm.
one. And when he did that and he said, well, the US government is going to back your project in Africa. What Mike said, it was an insurance scam. It like set off a bell in my head because that's what I was thinking. You know what? This is uh, what's going to happen in Africa now is that U.S. is going to go in there, half build a project, charge the U.S. government billions of dollars for it, and it cost them a few $1 million to make. I I I thought about that part when Obama made that announcement in Africa, and Mike just brought it back to my mind when he said that talked about the scam, the insurance scam.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Right.
All right, let me get to this next article real quick, and then we get into alcoholism and Afrocentricity. So, um, all right, this one is from face2faceafrica.com. These electric cars made in Africa would be the next big thing in the world. I don't know what that's supposed to be. Um, it's very interesting, though, just to look at it. It's called the Kira EV Smack Hybrid electric car, and Uganda's first hybrid electric car. Interesting. Makes my head hurt, though. I'm a car guy, so my head hurts.
Me too.
The
It's
continent, the continent of Africa is urbanizing faster than any other. With this growing urban population straining existing infrastructure, fuel is also becoming more and more expensive and even limited, adding up to pollution. Already, technological advancements in Africa have placed the continent in line for what is the future in technology on the global stage. Electric vehicles could have a huge impact on African cities and economies. So far, a few African countries have taken giant steps at manufacturing their own electric vehicles. While none of these vehicles have yet gone onto the global stage, one thing that is more interesting about the manufacturing of these vehicles is the fact that quite a number of them were built by university students. Interesting. It tells of what future the continent holds for technology and innovation. Read more about electric vehicles manufactured in Africa that are going to be the next big thing soon. So, um, here's another one. That's interesting. Developed at the Apostle Safo Suwe Technological Center at Gomoa and Bota, a town in central region of Ghana, this new electric car saves energy and releases zero greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. This is because the car has no internal combustion engine. No shit. Um, Interesting. It looks good though. It is powered by 12 rechargeable batteries. Each battery has a lifespan of over 4 years, unlike other electric cars. Kantanka, uh, Odential, O'Neill, I think that's how you pronounce it. O'Neill is built on user-friendly technology, making it easy to be recharged. Very interesting.
can you
What's this guy? The Jewel. Looks like a Chevy Bolt.
or is that Jewel? Because it's spelled like Jewel.
Yeah.
And since
This
since
car, this car manufactured in South Africa was its first locally developed electric car in 2012. The Jewel was as a result of years of research and hard work by Cape Town-based Optimal Energy in association with legendary South African-born automotive designer Keith Helfet. The Jewel is a zero-emission six-seater multi-purpose vehicle and made its debut at the Paris Motor Show. It uses just 20% of the energy used by a conventional car. Using a normal 220-volt home outlet, the Jewel's onboard charger, it takes approximately 7 hours to recharge the car's battery from a 200-kilometer driving range. So it's roughly, 120 miles. Not bad. Man, that car makes my head hurt. The Kira EV was built and unveiled by students of Uganda's Makerere University in 2011 with support from the government of Uganda for innovation projects at the university.
That thing is hideous.
I try not to judge.
It looks like an angry Kia.
Mm-hmm. What is this thing? The Lion Ozumba 551. If Inspector Gadget made it a life-size vehicle, this would be it. Man.
Go get it. Go get a truck.
Yeah. The car is made 80% locally in sourced materials, and it can undertake 30-kilometer distance when fully charged. It costs $2,200 to produce the car, reports Vanguard of Nigeria. It was unveiled by the University of Nigeria in Nsukka as the first ever 5-seater electric car produced in Nigeria by the Faculty of Engineering of the university. You know, when we talk about the brain power, we talked about this many times before, that Africans are leaps and bounds ahead of ADOS, beyond the hashtag. This is what they're doing over there. They're not screwing around, playing games, sitting on 8-hour hangouts talking about nothing. This is what they're doing over there. They're building cars in their universities. Their millennial generation are focused on fourth industrialized emerging tech. That's what they're doing over there. And this is a continent that has sparse power, sparse energy from country to country, meaning that they only have, out of a 24-hour day, they may have energy for maybe 4 to 6 hours at best, maybe 8 hours at best. And this is what they're doing. Brother Nagon, you have anything you want to add to this?
I second that emotion that you're breaking down, man. That's bottom line stuff, man. You know, where you have a lot of people here crying and complaining and saying they didn't get this and they didn't get that and all this and all that, and these guys are sitting here with, like I said, limited energy resources, and here they are, you know, creating. You know, I've been quite aware of what's been going on in Ghana and some other parts of Africa where they're not only, you know, creating cars but computers that are keyboardless computers where you can type in the air and then the characters come up on the screen and everything else like this. They're on some, it's cutting edge, bleeding edge technology. That's something we've been talking about for a while, and that's kind of where the continent is right now, and that's where it's happening. So, you know, so when a lot of people sitting around here complaining, you know, take a look at what's happening there, and it's pretty impressive stuff. So I have to second that emotion. What's up to people on the panel? Reigning Woman, Paul Bryant, what's up, baby?
How are you, sir? I just came back from a little tiny island 90 miles south of the coast of Florida called Cuba.
Oh, Cuba. Okay, man. What's going on over there?
It's good. It's good. Loved it. It's my third or fourth. No, so technically fourth trip. This time I had to go to Manzanilla for a little retreat. Take take care of something. But one thing that I did not see guys running around with silk screen T-shirts saying "I'm select, choose me," paid for by Beta Male Points.
Oh, fucking ball, man. Y'all
Hey,
boys.
Mike, you see what you did to Paul? Mike,
Oh, blame me, huh? I'm like Shaggy. It wasn't
uh,
me. Like Shaggy, it wasn't me.
it wasn't.
oh my gosh, I wasn't ready for that one. Oh my goodness.
But on a serious note, I would have to agree with Mike 100%. I would have to agree with Nagone 100%. You know, and I am not in tech or IT. Mike is, Nagone is, Lionel and Complex Design are. They have opened my eyes to a lot, and I've done a lot of independent research. And when Mike says leaps and bounds ahead, Africa has a developing tech R&D sector that is 20 years ahead of anything American black people are doing. Anything. Okay? So that is amazing. That is something that needs to be celebrated. All right? Not Beyonce running around with a blonde with a blonde weave, or not who's shaping up to shoot the next jump shot. That's unimportant. Or bashing women. None of that matters. We are in the fourth industrial revolution right now. Okay? So when the New York to Boston Hyperloop opens, and it's going to take you one hour from Times Square to Boston. All right, are you then going to wake up and say that, oh, I've been locked out of all the jobs? It's prejudice. Nah, you were told we're in the fourth industrial revolution right now. So what are you going to do? That's on you. That's on no system. That's on you if you're not ready to take advantage.
My problem, Paul, Nagone, Mike, is that we are seeing this. Well, we are seeing it here in Black Brain Trust, but all the other people are not. They're still seeing Africa as this place where if I go there, there's no welfare. Is the same? And guess what? Every one of those supposedly pieces of low tech that we are talking about here right now, I see. Nagon just mentioned that you type that Africans are making keyboards that you type in the air and put on screen. I see Microsoft, European companies, Chinese companies going into Africa and taking part ownership of these things that are being developed by universities, the kids, the next generation.
trying to steal it. Trying to steal it. De. Call it out.
Ex-
Call it out. Call it out.
well,
Call it out.
thank you very much. Stealing the technology that is being developed in Africa, while we, the people, 80 of us who have money, or who pretend that they have money and spend the money on diverse activities here in America. Um, they will not go there because Africa has nothing for them. But guess what? They will complain about the Chinese going and taking over Africa. And this is foolishness. I mean, I hate to think of it because it causes me headaches at night. That I don't have enough money to do these things. I'm serious. It causes me headache when I go to Africa and I see these things or I read about these things. It I'm saying to myself, man, I wish I had this. I wish I had that. I could do this. Even at 10%, if I had enough money that I could put 10% into one of these projects, each one of these projects, 20 years down the road, that car that now looks like a I don't know. It looked like a Honda when Honda first started selling cars in America. Now look at Honda cars in America. That's the thing that we have to do. We have to start looking at the future instead of looking, yesterday what the women in America are doing. We gotta stop that foolishness.
No, you're right. You're right. I don't know who has all that noise in the background, but please mute yourself. What I will say is here we'll transition into Afrocentricity and alcoholism. I think Paul Bryant wanted to talk about alcoholism, but I want to preface this by saying what Afrocentricity is. Afrocentricity is a way of life governed by the perspective that has the experience and reality of African people as its central reference point. It places the best interests of African people first, right? Recognizing the self preservation is the first law of nature. So, if you go to the beginning of the hangout, you'll see that um, how the hangout. Oh, what's going on, Salchi? Let me make sure we send you a link because I know you want to get on the panel. Shoot, do I send that to him?
You know what? It's funny that DE made mention of that first car that Honda sold here in this country because I'm a gearhead. Mike, you're a gearhead. That thing, that first car that Honda sold, it was hideous. It had those same ugly bug eyes, except for that crazy, outrageous grill that Uganda car has. It really looks. DE's right, man. It's about 90% similar. So it's hideous. I don't like it, but I applaud them. I applaud the effort, and DE is right because in less than what 40, 50 years, look how Honda transformed themselves from a country that was nuked, not once but twice.
Yeah, not
Afro,
transform itself, but Honda transformed between Honda and Toyota.
Right,
Well,
right.
Nissan to some extent, they transformed the whole auto industry. I
That's
mean, these guys changed the whole auto industry. Mercedes Benz. I mean, Mercedes Benz had to step up their game to compete with Honda and Toyota.
bro for Ferrari, the company the company Ferrari is now with how they build their cars. Luca de Montezemolo, who took over after the old man died, he said they bought a Acura NSX and they studied it and took it apart and made them change how they build their cars. So that says a lot. So you're right. The technology trickled down from the supercars to the luxury benchmark standard of the world, which is still Benz, to everyone, even the Americans. So my point is, I was merely trying to totally agree with what DE said. From humble beginnings, you see where Honda is now. So potentially, the potential is there from humble beginnings. The Ugandans, the potential is there. Humble beginnings, they could potentially do the same exact thing. You just
Yeah,
have to have the right mindset.
let,
and
let me
also it's a new generation, and you're seeing a new generation create their own technology because they're going to be the people who are going to be using this technology in the future, not us, the older generation. The older generation might say, well, you know what, we buying a car that looks good and drives good for us, but the old generation is going to say they're going to make it first. They're going to perfect the working model, and then they're going to create something that pleasing to their eyes, and from that generation on they're going to be selling it to themselves and their children.
Afrocentricity is not a prejudice or hatred, nor is it the perspective of a black person simply because he or she is black. It is compassionate and humanist, while also being bold and intelligent. It respects differing perspectives of others as long as they are non-antagonistic, but understands that the slave and the slave master viewed the world through different positions and experiences. Afrocentric men and women are knowledgeable in the history and experience of African people. They care about themselves and the community through which they owe their existence. Accepting the accepting the community is more important than the individual, and live by the principle that teaches I am because we are, and because we are, therefore I am. Afrocentric men and women are proud but not arrogant. They are not bound by the perspectives or definitions of others. They seek truth and define their own reality. They are active in shaping the world that will become our future, understanding that the world was not given to us by our parents, rather, it was loaned to us by our children. Afrocentric men and women have asked and answered to themselves the following questions: who am I? Question of identity. What am I? Question of humanity. Why am I? Question of purpose and role. Where am I? Question of location and grand scheme of things. When am I? Question of urgency and priority. How am I? Question of competency and skill. Anybody on the panel have anything they want to add to that?
Personally, I am going to take a quick step back and yield my time to the consigliere Nagon 11, so we can benefit from his experience as to his perspective and thoughts on this topic before I say anything.
No, man, I'm gonna let you guys go in first. I appreciate that their Minister of Defense. Oh my!
But so we got Sauchi on the panel now, so we can set it off with Sauchi. What's going on, bro?
Yeah, man. Sauchi, go ahead. You guys jump in. I'll jump in last. Go ahead. I'd like to hear you guys.
Good evening to everyone.
Sauchi, what's going on, bro?
I'm good, man. Everything's always good. I
Evening.
mean, being first generation, um, growing up, it's you know, for me, the experience with because I just all saw us as black, regardless of the fact of where we were from. There was like this division because my family, for the most part, was obviously born in Africa, and a lot of Black Americans here didn't really know their history dating back to Africa. So there was always this big disconnect, like as if Africans didn't know things. I would have questions from little kids when I was a kid. You know, do you guys drive cars? And I didn't understand. I mean, I would just answer it and laughing, because I'd be like, no, we have roads there. um you know Animals don't just run around, because we have concrete roads and we have buildings just like America. So that's one problem, obviously, due to slavery. That was the big disconnect. But I think a big thing that could help here in the States would be going back to having rites of passage. Many different African countries still do that. It's it's kind of hard to bring that here because people forget. A lot of people look at Africa as just one place, but there are different countries. It's a continent with different countries, with different languages, with different you know uh, um, beliefs. And I think a lot of people seem to forget that or not understand that. But I think if we can bring some rites of passage here, obviously that would be starting down to the kids. I think that'd be a good start with moving things forward. But again, we would have to be very vigilant about that. Personally, I think the energy would be it would have to be very similar to something that we saw here with World War One and Two. Honestly, if we really want things to move like within like 5 to 10 years, because realistically, we have to move like that. Um, that's my take, man. Other than that, I mean, Africa. I mean, even my parents are from, the Civil War ended, about 10 years ago, roughly. They're still rebuilding. There's still infrastructure problems. Um,
Liberia.
yeah, in Liberia. So it's tough. I mean, even if I were to go there, as far as they're concerned, I'm born here, so I'm American. So it doesn't matter of my education or anything. It's, the people who are there who, in their minds, who have first dibs. Even though I have, history. Even though, one of my grandfathers was, a very well respected ambassador. The other one was a big time entrepreneur, military guy. They will respect that at that level. But me being born here, it's like, you're an American boy, and that's how they're gonna see it. So I think, ADOS. I think that's another thing that they would have to understand. Yes, you do have African blood, but going back, you can't go back saying, yes, these are my roots. We're gonna come and change things, because they're not gonna take it serious. They're not even gonna take me serious. So it's just, it's kind of going back there with the mindset. Okay, so what's going on, and how can we help build the younger folks? They'll be with it. The older folks who went through stuff and been waiting and all this other stuff, man. The majority, man, they're not trying to hear, and that's something that's not publicized, but that's what goes on all throughout Africa, man. That's my take.
Selichi, if you look at American culture, you see that the old folks here are the ones who are the most, what they call it here, conservative. They hate
Yeah.
change.
Yep.
They will die. Um, that's why you have this people calling call. You see a black man walking down the street, call the police. You see,
Yep.
you see a black man working in his garden, call the police. You got these old folk that don't want to see change.
Yeah. And I
And,
mean, I understand. Yeah, I understand that. I understand, but it's the ego needs to be put aside, because I mean, if you supposedly really love your land, love your country, love your land, love your family, love your kids, you're gonna want to see it in a better, position. So if these quote unquote younger folks have the will, have the energy, have the resources per se, then let's just, in my mind, let's just get it done. I mean, but I wasn't born there, and I'm a very pragmatic person. I don't care, man. I mean, if I don't, I mean, if somebody 20 some years old is better than me at some, then they gonna take the lead. Period. Because it's bigger than me. But like you said, a lot of older folks are very, conservative, and they just can't get out of their own way, and so they're definitely not gonna get out of the way just for progress, man. And that's what you see throughout Africa. There's a whole bunch of you know turmoil, ups and downs, man. You know, I think we have a window right now. I mean, how things are gonna play out. I mean, I don't know. I have plenty of ideas, but I'm a pragmatic person, and it might be extreme to most, even in Africa, even here. But it's tough, man. We really don't have time.
Whatever your views are, I guarantee you they're not as extreme as mine. So I will save my extreme views for when we're off air. But at the risk of beating a dead horse, living there and working there, um, infrastructure is the biggest problem. Okay, lack of infrastructure, lack
Yep.
of education,
Yep.
the irrigation and drainage problem, and the inability of the intellectual capital to exploit and produce your own resources out of the ground, lack of industrial manufacturing capacity. So combine all of that with the basics of human nature, the desire to meet the basic human needs because you're at the lowest end of the socioeconomic strata. Shelter, food, procreation, daily survival. So now you have corruption. You have all the nation states, east and west,
Yep.
in the many nation states contributing to the corruption. So, if you are of the best and the brightest, which are the few, they're not the majority of black people. Harsh but true.
Yep.
So if you are among the few and you have the intellectual and financial capacity and wherewithal to go and do business, do you have resources, one, to actually conduct business? Do you have contacts on the ground? Do you have resources set aside to bribe people on the local level,
Oh yeah.
on the state level? Do you have resources set aside, or will you have enough operating capital to divert for ongoing bribes?
Yep. Yep.
These are all facts. These are things that have to be considered. If you are no are not in country, what is the condition and status of your business? Is it something that needs to be watched? Is that something that resources need to be allocated for? Okay, again, depending upon the type of business. Now, mindsets also need to be changed. So, um, I can go into why we're not talking about the majority of black people. We're not. We're talking about the best and the brightest. One, they have the capital, they have the wherewithal, and they have the mindset. So those few are going to have to go over there and conduct business with the few over there in Africa who also have the resources and the mindset. So again, without beating another dead horse, Mike V met with individuals such as that. Okay, they have $1 billion contracts on the table right now. Okay, so those are the individuals that we're talking about. So
Okay.
again, harsh but true. We're not talking about the majority of black people in America. We're not talking about the majority of people even on the continent of Africa.
Yep.
But you
That's right.
have to start with infrastructure, education, healthcare, finance, and then begin to change mindsets. So it's like construction. There's four phases: demo and excavation,
Hmm.
foundation, core and shell, and then the finished work. You have to begin the demolition and excavation before you can build your foundation. And that foundation has to start with the best and brightest on both sides of the pond. All your hashtags and how you feel, not you per se, but how people
Yeah.
feel. You know what, me personally, I don't care about any of that. I dismiss it as so much BS. Only thing that matters to me is putting money on the table. That's it. So once that's done and the foundation is built and set, then all the people with the hashtags and everything else, then they can have at it. But without that solid foundation of infrastructure, finance, education, mindsets, drainage and irrigation, and agriculture, then the intellectual capital can be leveraged so that all of these things can become self-sustaining. Again, just my take from the time that I spent almost 2 years living and working there.
I totally agree with
Wow,
everything
that's
he's saying.
oh,
I mean,
I'm sorry.
um,
Go ahead.
one of the things that I remember my dad saying, he's saying it doesn't matter where you go in life, human beings are human beings. And the older I get, the more true it becomes. And unfortunately, I haven't been out the country yet, and I haven't been out to Africa yet. But I mean, just talking to Africans from different parts, obviously from Africa, and young folks, and they all say very similar things, and it's saddening because you want to help, but it's like,
Bro, human nature reflects itself in
yeah,
every aspect of human endeavor.
yeah,
I have to sit down and wow, Paul, that was pretty good. I
yeah,
think what Paul's really talking about are the fundamentals,
yep,
the A, B, and the C's, the fundamentals, and you can't move outside of the fundamentals there.
yeah,
And he's totally right about that. Pretty good breakdown, Paul. I can't find that. That's pretty good. I have to I have to agree with that. If we're going to leverage all of what we need to leverage, you're going to have those things, in place. Now, can blacks from here who have dollars and experience and knowledge and so forth to go over and help and get engaged? I definitely think so. I was talking with Mike V. Mike did speak about some groups he's talking about, and they want to see African Americans come over there.
Yeah.
And um, we're gonna have to have capital as well. Leverage your capital properly, which is another question because boots on the ground. You talk about paying certain people certain ways and
Yeah.
paying things off to keep certain things going at a certain rate. These are all variables, but at the same time, at the end of the day, you're going to need capital to come in there. So we're definitely going to have to leverage that. And I'm going to say this: we here in America, we as far as African Americans, we can say poor or whatever, we have enormous wealth that
Yeah.
we could help to leverage over there. Enormous,
Yeah.
okay, enormous. Let's be real about it. We do, and we can leverage that properly there if we're properly organized. And the key piece here is mindset. And boy, that is so.
Y-
That is a major
It's
crux of the
it,
issue on both sides of the pond.
it,
But anyway, go ahead.
it's definitely mindset, and the other thing is accountability. Um,
Well, that
as a
goes into the mindsets. I
yeah,
think to a large extent because you have to. But anyway, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, no. I mean, you're totally correct. I mean, I watched this as a child. My father was, part of the Liberian Association. He was the Speaker of the House, basically here in America, and because my dad has, I mean, integrity out of this world. When he walked in the building, people knew it was no joke. So, which is a good thing. The problem is if everyone isn't on board, you know, then you're gonna have some serious problems. So after, I mean, my dad was doing it for years, and after he was just tired of the no progress, and he and a couple other guys that were on his level left. I mean, for the most part, the association. I mean, it's still there to this day, but the level that it was at back in the '80s, in the early '90s when my dad was a part of it, not even close. And that's here, and it's worse in Liberia, and obviously generally in Africa. Um, some people just feel entitled to certain things because maybe because of their some certain family member was whomever in a chain decades ago or a few years ago, or because they were there and they feel it's their time. So that's another thing which that gets in the way of the building the infrastructure. And that's why you'll see other races or whomever. I mean, you've heard of many billionaires here who've tried and they won't even step back over there because they've been burnt. And it's just really sad. I honestly, I mean, in my 20s, I honestly, and this might be too extreme for now, I honestly used to say it back in my 20s. I would say the only way that things are going to change in Africa unless all the old folks die all at once. That's what I would say. And a lot of people get pissed off at me. They didn't understand what I meant. What I was saying
Bingo.
was, you the only way to kill an ideal, because an ideal is only real with those who are alive, who believe that. Because we're not going to change their mind. So how else can we get past that and
There is
move
more
forward?
truth in what you just said than I think even you realize. There is more truth in what you just said than I honestly think even you realize. So, again, I said I will save my extreme views when we're
Yeah.
off air, and I
Yeah.
will, because Mike already knows what they are. I'll leave them when we're off air.
Yeah.
But, um, you know, mindsets have to change, and I'll say this again, more harsh but true. It's going to take the best and the brightest on both sides of the pond.
Yeah.
Because if you think that the majority of black people in America are ready, much less prepared, just ready for anything that we're discussing right now, if you honestly believe that, any person, you're fooling yourself.
Yeah.
If you honestly believe the majority of Africans are ready, or prepared. But for them, it's different reasons.
Yeah.
They're different reasons. However, so it is going to take the best and the brightest on both sides. So um, you also have massive hurdles. Okay,
Yep.
so being that the nation states occupy the lowest end of the socioeconomic strata, corruption is rampant. Okay,
Yep.
not to call out any heads of state because I'm going to piss people off in the chat right now.
Yeah.
You you have people who have set themselves up as president for life, so
Yep.
and so for life,
Yep.
executive ruler for life of several African states. I don't go in, but I do the research. So these are things that have to be dealt with down the road. Okay, starting with the foundation and starting small and working your way up. Because if you think, because I hear a lot of American black people who love to say, well, we have to go right to the top and root out the corruption and we have to get people out. Understand something. The heads of state are themselves corrupt. The
Yep.
people around them and under them are corrupt. So with that said, do you think you're going to outbribe the United States? You think you're going
Yeah.
to outbribe China or France or Great Britain or Belgium? The all of the former colonial powers. So my point is without going too far down that
Yeah.
particular rabbit hole, I'm only
Eh,
of the belief. Start with the foundation, infrastructure, drainage and irrigation, agriculture, education, healthcare, finance, mindsets on both sides of the pond.
Yep. And the other thing that a lot of people here, being born here, not understanding, when you go there, it's not like America. Like as you just said, we can go there, we can go to the top, and yeah, you can try to do that, but don't think you can't be touched or your family members can't be touched. People disappearing. It's the real world outside of America. And a lot of people here don't understand that.
Hmm.
Um, Mike is talking about Afrocentricity, and I think
Yep.
the technology coming in is going to kind of bring that to the fore because uh, blockchain is something that say all of us on the panel and everybody in the chat. If we wanted to do something here in America, right, that will benefit a majority of African Americans here, this same blockchain technology can help if if we use the Afrocentric model.
Yeah.
And if we do that in Africa, it will help even more because you don't have all the influencers are actually external. The influencers are influencing the leaders who are the ones there on the ground holding back the progress. Whereas here in America, you're working under the influencers. You know, they are watching you from here. But if say we went to Africa using the blockchain technology, all the things that Paul talked about, with this Afrocentric model, we will fix that within this generation. We wouldn't have to be waiting for the next generation to come along who are going to embrace it and go work around the old people, as Salchi says, those old people who need to be getting out of the way. We don't have to wait till they die because we would be working around them. You understand? It's
Yeah.
like building little cities, building little cities where we are because we have all the technology to build that city. You can put a power generation system in a little town. You can put a sewer system in that little town. And before the leaders know it, they be building connections between the town and by the time they realize it, the whole thing is built out. And then and they had nothing to do with it. They didn't get any bribes from it. So, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you move in that same blockchain, you know, you develop this little town, and you develop the little city over here, little city over there, little city over there, and you then after you connect them all, you got one state that's going to function as one, and each one has control over the whole system. It's not like the control is decentralized. I don't know if you guys understand what I'm saying, but that's the way the technology today is going to. If you're Afrocentric, you can work around the old guard and replace them without them even knowing.
You know,
That's
for my pardon me, brother. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's possible, but then it goes right back to infrastructure. Now you have military, or you have little you know I forget the name, little military troops out there on their own who will come around and try to destroy these things. So now we're talking about also building, you know, creating a military class as well. I mean, what what we're basically talking about, we're literally talking about rebuilding co- a continent or countries from the ground up,
Yeah,
With
I understand what you're
all
saying.
systems across the board, just
gentlemen,
in Africa and around the
gentlemen,
world.
personally, from just my personal opinion, I have said since since my time over there, I'm still firmly of the belief the place to start is Nigeria.
Okay.
Nigeria is top three in the world in proven oil reserves.
Yep.
Okay, so start with the infrastructure, with the mindset, not clearly stated publicly, but with the mindset. Something has to be done to address the problem of the oil wells
Yep.
around the country. All right.
Yep.
Through the email chain, I sent out video upon video to all the members of the Black Brain Trust about how the oil and gas companies have literally destroyed villages, destroyed lakes, rivers and streams behind the oil and gas trade.
Yep.
They drill for oil, they improperly cap the wells, and then they leak with the purpose of destroying the surrounding environment so that people can no longer live off their own land.
Yep.
I've seen this with my own eyes. I've seen entire fields as you're walking. There's the ground. Imagine ground instead of being soggy from water, soggy from oil.
Yep.
I've seen this. So I'm of the mindset you start in Nigeria with infrastructure projects, healthcare, education, finance, changing mindsets, and as you're doing so, you have the resource there because Nigeria has the oil reserves to
Yep.
turn everything around. You start there.
Yep.
Only my personal opinion.
Makes
Hey,
sense.
let me reread this so that people have a better perspective of what we're saying for those who just joined the chat. Afrocentricity is a way of life governed by the perspective that has the experience and reality of African people as its central reference point. It is the point of view that interprets that world through African eyes. It places the best interests of African people first, recognizing that self-preservation is the first law of nature. Afrocentricity is not prejudice or hatred, nor is it the perspective of a black person simply because he or she is black. It is compassionate and humanist while also being bold and intelligent. It respects differing perspectives of others as long as they are non-antagonistic, but understands that the slave and the slave master view the world through different positions and experiences. Afrocentric men and women are knowledgeable in the history and experience of African people. They care about themselves and the community through which they owe their existence. Accepting the community is more important than the individual, and live by the principle that teaches I am because we are, and because we are, therefore I am. Afrocentric men and women are proud but are not arrogant. They are not bound by the perspectives or definitions of others. They seek truth and define their own reality. They are active in shaping the world that will become our future. Understanding that. So you guys can go ahead and jump back in based on what was read.
If
we
I
we we have to. That has to be the model if Africa is going to become a world leader. It has to be. If you look at how America became a world leader, it was focused on just America first controlling the landmass of America, and then controlling the rest of the world. That's how the dollar came into being the world trading currency. And that's what we have to do. We have to focus on everybody has to give. Not everybody's going to give, but at some point you're going to have to accept that this is what has to happen. Um, uh, it has to happen in order for us to benefit, for everyone to benefit from it. We have to begin looking at the whole world through an Afrocentric lens. Everything we do is gotta be by us for us. We got everything. It may not be able to be possible for us to do everything right now, but we have to be saying today I'm going to do this because it's going to benefit us. Tomorrow I'm going to add to that, and the next day I'm going to add to that. And the next day I will have a plan that every day I'm going to increase my production in whatever I do that is going to benefit us in general, not just me personally, but benefit the African people. And we only it's got to be done through our own efforts, educating our own mind first, and then educating our children, our children's children, our neighbors. We got to talk to our neighbors about, look, you know what? Things are not going right for us here in America. We got to do this to make it do. We got to do this to fix it. Can't be afraid to talk about it anymore. You can't let divert. You can't divert from the conversation. You got to focus on what needs for all of us. Not all of us going to be happy doing it. Not all of us going to want to do it. But those people who see the need going to have to enforce that Afrocentric view. We got to. We have to. We need to. Otherwise, um, it's we can fail. People see Africa growing, and they think that it's just going to do it by itself, but it's not going to do it by itself. It can fail. Something can happen that can derail it, and it has been derailed before. If you look at how America and Britain and France killed off all the black leaders in Africa in the 70s, you will see that it can be derailed. So we can't let that happen the second time. The Afrocentric view that Mike just put forward, what he just read, will absolutely, I mean, guarantee that it can't be real.
Well,
can I add
we,
one?
let me just finish this real quick.
Mhm.
If you think about the Black Brain Trust and as a formative body, we actually obey a lot of those principles that were spoken about being Afrocentric or Afrocentricism. So the JPEG or the JPEG on the front of the channel of this video says that it is not unity that we must seek, but collective consciousness. In Afrocentricity, there is a remarkable surge of consciousness that transcends the current emphasis on unity. This is the next act in our drama. Consciousness precedes unity. So I think we embody a lot of those principles, and what's happening in the manosphere is that you don't have enough of these principles being practiced at all, which is why the manosphere looks the way that it does. And a lot of people would disagree with me about what was going on in 2007, 2008, 2009, but those principles were there back then. Nagon 11 was there back then. Wacky World of O was around back then. Soul and Black was around back then. They can speak to those principles. Those principles were there. But today, if you want to know why the manosphere is in chaos, it's because they don't embody any of these principles. Go ahead.
Which is exactly what I wanted. Which is exactly that. Thank you, bro. That first off, that was very excellently said. I could not have said it any better. Thank you for that. For saying that. Thank you. Um, that's exactly what I was going to say. It is not enough to just have something black. Oh, it's great. It's this this is black. Therefore, it's great. It's made up of black. It looks black. That's all. That's all we need. No, it does not work that way. Okay, what is the functionality? What is the quality? What is the substance? Okay, whether it's from any level, from a state level down to a local or individual level. It is not good enough to just say, "Oh, it just has to be black," or "I just want someone black." It doesn't work that way. It has to be substance. All right, that has to be quality. So I think that somewhere along the way, that has been lost. So now it's a case of there is a narrative. There is a narrative that says, well, you're black, you just have to support everything black, and you have to just want black and just be black. And those are the words. But a lot of the mindset that's behind that, when you put it under the microscope, you're just anti-white. So your overriding driving concern is simply being anti-white. So anything that is not white must be good, which is binary thinking, by the way. So
Mhm.
no, you have to vet people. People must be vetted. Mindsets must be vetted. Narratives and agendas and plans must be vetted. It is not enough to just say, oh, so and so is black, or a group is black, or a leader is black, or an agenda is black. That is not good enough. Okay. That is binary thinking. That is short sighted thinking. That is choosing style over substance. All right. So without veering too far off, of course, um, some people may question the relevance, but after Tony Blair, England elected Gordon Brown. They wanted someone who could turn the economy around, turn the country around, and he did that. And then he was booted out because people said he's boring, he's not the charismatic, excuse me, pretty boy that Tony Blair was. So they elected someone new, young, and exciting, who was David Cameron. And the first thing he did within 6 months was give England austerity. And he put them down this path where they're now dealing with this Brexit nonsense. So I say all of that to say it is not enough. I think that I'm of the opinion that it seems to be at some point this quote unquote term Afrocentric. People are more concerned with being anti-white instead of choosing actual substance, right? Quality. That's what you have to choose. And people and things and ideas amongst us, they must be vetted. They have to be quality. It is not good enough to simply say, oh well, they're black, that's what we want, that's good enough. So if that's all you want, then you have no game plan, you have no strategy. So when you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Mhm. It's interesting because I brought up Soul and Black, but Soul and Black had something back in the day called the BMCC, the
Mm,
Black Male Conscious Collective, and it speaks to the principles that I said earlier about the opening chat, right? So I'll reread it again for those who did not hear me the first time. It is not unity that we must seek, but collective consciousness. In Afrocentricity, there is a remarkable surge of consciousness that transcends the current emphasis on unity. This is the next act in our drama. Consciousness precedes unity. So there's a lot of principles out there in Afrocentricity that really sets the course for a would-be constitutional body to abide by if we're going to actually go forward with whatever it is that we're talking about here. What I see happening just in the manosphere alone, I know a lot of people like to write off the manosphere, but I think there was, at one point, there was a collective consciousness. Soul and Black had named the whole entire thing back then in 2008, the BMCC, the Black Male Collective Consciousness. So he saw the writing on the wall 11 years ago. He even made T-shirts for it. So there's a lot of things that we can actually learn from some of these principles that we can add to our everyday lives, and the Black Brain Trust, I would say, follows a lot of it to a T. Nicole, you have anything you want to add to this? Yeah, I think Nicole is away right now.
Yeah,
That you have anything to add?
I think Nagone is down in the basement. He's counting his beta male coins right now. You got to give him a minute.
Oh, hey, I'm sorry, fellas. I was just in the middle of conversation here, man. I heard beta male coins. I said, oh, that must be me. Anyway,
All is on a roll today.
Too much. You guys.
You were like John Wick.
This thing has never stopped.
Yo, you were like John Wick, bro. You broke up the concrete in the basement. You pulled out your case of golden beta male coins, and you're ready to rock.
Oh, you're gonna get us flagged, man.
Paul, man, you gotta chill, baby.
I'll stop.
Beta male coins. Oh my gosh. Anyway, what was the question, fellas? I'm sorry. I do apologize. I know there must have been a question here, and then I'm missing.
No, there was no question. There was no question. It was just about the it was about the opening on the Hangout. So basically, it said that it is not unity that we must seek, but the collective consciousness. In Afrocentricity, there is a remarkable surge of consciousness that transcends the current emphasis on unity. This is the next act in our drama. Consciousness precedes unity.
Yeah, I mean, I think that gets back to the mindset piece. So, I think it's definitely how we're thinking. So yeah, I would follow along that line. I would have to say that. I definitely would.
Mm-hmm. Paul, you wanted to talk about alcoholism and Afrocentricity. You have anything you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, kind of, sort of. As I said, I was more than prepared. I was more than prepared to let Nagone go first because of, especially given the time period that he grew up and he lived in, because he saw the major shift, but amongst Black people in America. But my thoughts, my perspective, my mindset on that. My first question was, I was curious as to what was your train of thought with that alcoholism and Afrocentrism. I was a little curious before I answer. I don't want to go sideways and derail anything. So just a little curious as to what your thought process was on that before I even answer.
So it's actually a lyric from Common's song, "The Sixth Sense," I think. He talks about alcoholism and Afrocentricity. I forget the way the bar goes, but I thought the lyric was pretty dope, and it was relevant to a lot of stuff that we are going to talk about tonight. So doesn't necessarily have to be about that, but it can be about that if you want it to be.
Oh, all right. Well, okay. Well, several several ways I could go with that, and trying to stay mindful that I don't want to get the I don't want to get the video flagged because my views can be very extreme. But ah, alcoholism. Um, you know what? I'll just I'll just say this.
Hmm.
Better to maybe not even. It has been a devastating effect on Black people in America. I see how it continues to be a problem from people of my parents' age, our age, and even the youth. So I don't, for the purpose of this conversation, I don't look at or care what other phenotypes are doing, because if we're talking about what a Black person should do or what a group of Black people should be doing, I'm of the mindset that the first thing or the last thing you should be doing is concerning yourself about what another phenotype is doing. You should concern yourself with what your phenotype is doing. That's Afrocentrism. So that is not that does not mean that you're anti anyone, white, Asian, Arab, anyone. You're not about basically being the flip side of that coin of prejudice and or hate. Your thing is, for those who look like you just want to see yourself and themselves do well. So with all of that said, um, I believe that it has been a problem. It has had a devastating effect to those who occupy the lowest ends of the socioeconomic strata. People of all levels get affected by drugs and alcohol, but across this entire country, you tend to see the largest effects at the lowest ends of the socioeconomic strata. So, since the majority of Black people tend to occupy that end, you know, that is an issue that still needs to be dealt with. Whether it's a societal issue, the music tends to play a role in that as a cultural mindset. It's something that it's one of the problems that still needs to be looked at. Um, I think that there are other issues and concerns that are larger and are more pressing, just in my opinion. But I do think that it is something that still needs to be looked at. So I don't know what your thoughts. I think we've kind of thoroughly covered the whole Afrocentrism piece. So just what are your thoughts on the alcoholism piece?
I don't know if I don't know if I have a real perspective on alcoholism. It's more along the lines of environment, right? So people only going to get drunk if they have access to the alcohol. Why there's so many liquor stores in predominantly Black neighborhoods, I have no idea how they're able to get this stuff passed. But if we're going to use it from a euphemism standpoint, I would say that people are getting drunk off of being pro-Black, right? So you have all these people.
And
You have
you
all
said
these
I'm bad.
people. Yeah. Well, yeah. You have people running around, with the medallions and all the dashikis made in China, made in Taiwan. Um, and putting their fists in the air and saying, "Yeah, bliggity, 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 Black," like Dodge Effects or something. And I often wonder if these people are just being intoxicated off of the the surface talk, right? go back to Africa. All we got to take out this guy and that guy, and you're not really pro-black unless you do this, unless you have Albert on the back of your jeans or Dragon Ball Z or something like that. So there, and I see this I see this in social media a lot, man. People are running around, trying to emulate what Afrocentrism is and Afrocentricity without actually living by the principles that we spoke of. So there's a lot of that going on, and guys are using that to get women now. They're impregnating women on YouTube.
Mike,
Yeah.
Mike,
Well, it's
are
allegedly.
Mike, listen, I agree with you 1000%. Okay, because the thing is this, right? As you love to say,
Oh boy.
you cannot, you like to say you cannot hashtag your way through. I personally like to say, you have to think your way through. Okay, so many people they want hashtags and they have emotional mindsets and they have these emotional ways of thinking. You know, none of that stuff works. Okay, and as you say, most pro-blacks do not even live up to the ideals that they claim that they espouse. Okay, they absolutely do not, and they are in no position. They do not have even basic knowledge of international banking, finance, business, education, agriculture. Most of these people, they couldn't find Egypt if Pharaoh himself gave them a map. Yet they're pro-black, they're hoteps, they know this, that, and the third about Africa, and this is what it needs, and this has to be done. I'm like, you know what? Most have never been there. They don't know what's going on. They do not know the situation, and the rest are intellectually disingenuous, completely intellectually disingenuous. So, you know, all these hashtags this and we need this and we need that, and you're not even living up to those ideals. So how can I possibly take you seriously?
What you're
Yeah,
talking about
and
is
it also
what
and
Paul's
also that they believe that the Earth is flat. These are the flat earthers,
yeah, that's the
right?
new thing now. Yeah,
Oh man.
Go ahead,
it,
Selchi.
it's emotional and mental masturbation. Just call it what it is, Paul. It's all right.
Of
that's
course it
that's
is.
what's
Of
going on
course it
right
is.
now.
It's emotional masturbation. It's emotional masturbation. It's intellectual masturbation. You have a lot of egomaniacal blowhards who pontificate, they proselytize, and they bloviate. And it's like enough. So while everyone is conducting a circle jerk, you know what? Sorry, scratch that from the record. I don't want the video to get flagged. While everyone is engaged in a circle of mutual pleasuring themselves, right? What are you actually accomplishing? Because look, listen, I have heard these arguments for 40 plus years. You're having the same exact talking points, the same exact narratives. You change nothing, you've done nothing, but yet all you want to do is talk, spit out hot air to hear yourself think, to possibly maintain some type of position in your mind only. And that anyone who does not occupy that, then, as Mike said, they're not black enough. So I look at Robert F. Smith. People are attacking this man because of what he has on his arm. But yet he's done more to help actual black men than 99% of these so-called pro-blacks, pro-wax, hoteps, back to Africa's pour out the libation types.
It's more
Well,
it's more surface than that. He wears a suit. I mean,
God
I mean,
forbid.
well,
my God.
I mean, when you look at the pro-black movement, I mean, or I would say the consciousness movement. I mean, a lot of people are in it now who I don't think if you really asked them who were the kind of the real formulators, the real kind of founders in this movement and the intellectual depths that this thing has really come from, who really were the real founders in this, besides mentioning once again, let's say a Malcolm X, or let's say a Marcus Garvey, besides others, who really formulated a lot of this pro-black thought based on history and then many other things. They couldn't really tell you. So you have a lot of shysters and other kind of folks in here, kind of ripping off the game. I mean, that's something that many of us have seen. I mean, I was just going to ask you a question. Haven't we seen a few people literally on YouTube themselves drinking and stuff and all this, and they're supposed to be pro-black or whatever? I don't know. I've seen a little bit of that. But I don't know. I don't know if it goes on a whole lot, but it seems like there seems to be some of that going on. And I'm not trying to.
Can I ask you a question, please, sir?
Yeah, go ahead.
Forgive me for interrupting you. I'm going to ask you
what's up, man?
one quick question. From everything I studied and I learned about the Black Panther Party, so when Miss Beyonce Knowles got on stage, claimed that she was representing the Black Panther Party with that blonde-colored dirty floor mop on her head, how the hell is that pro-black? And black people are saying, that's our queen, Black Panther.
That's a beehive, man.
Hold on. We're talking about Beyonce and Black Panther pro-black, right? That's what we're talking about. Beyonce, right?
What she did at the Super Bowl.
Okay. Anyway, I rest my case. But just
Don't hold back.
but moving forward, I would say the whole, when you really get deep into the Black consciousness movement and the formulators of it, many of these people can't even speak to some of it, to who these people were. They can't speak to them. So I mean, you have to really, you have to consider, like my father used to always say, consider the source. Look at who's saying this stuff. Look who's calling themselves this, and look at what they're saying. Look what they're doing. Forget about what they're saying. Look at what they're doing. And I think that kind of speaks about it. I think in that whole movement, they need a big cleanup job as well, because they are some pro-blacks who are in there who are quite serious, quite intellectual, and they're catching a tough way. They're catching a tough go of it because of what's going on inside of it.
There it is, right there. That's the problem. You actually have to use your brain, and that's not popular. It's easier to celebrate mediocrity, and that's what we're seeing. And that's why you see a lot of issues also with substance abuse, or alcohol and all that, because they're numbing themselves from whatever pain they're going through, as opposed to finding solutions, and surrounding themselves with people who have already had the solutions. They just don't want to do the work. And some people,
because it's romanticizing of Afrocentricism and Afrocentricity that has them doing this. They're romanticizing everything,
Bingo.
Yep.
And the sad part about it is, it's a waste of time from their perspective, because they're not really. There's no return on investment, and there's no future in your fronting. So
Yep.
And it's not. It isn't scalable. I'm sorry to go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, it was when my grandfather was alive, and it was well known. Well, my father's father, who was ambassador, it was well known amongst his circle. If you didn't have a brain, if you didn't have integrity, you weren't welcome. It was public. Period. And a lot of people don't understand that they have issues with standards. I mean, I don't understand why it's so hard for people to see that it's standards that's what's going to get you forward. I mean, I really just don't, personally, I really just don't get why it's so hard, especially when you have the internet and you can see that. I mean, people can get on there and see The Rock, Now we literally, you can see him on Instagram nonstop. The guy's in the gym. The guy's at another meeting. He's here. He's there. He's working. It's no different anywhere else when you have to function at a high level.
Because of what you just said, it's too hard to set standards. It is easier to hashtag and have all these emotionally fueled mindsets and ideas and be a victim and play the blame game and point fingers. All of that's easy. It's too difficult to set standards. It's too difficult to just say, you know what, I'm just going to go out and make it happen. It's
Yeah,
easier to not set standards.
but Paul, these people do have standards. If if your standard is I wake up this morning and I go on Instagram to look at uh, him or her naked, or I get up this morning, see what Wall Street's doing, see what kind of rules and regulations are in being changed to hinder my business environment, see what's going on in the rest of the world, say in China or Africa. If your standards are that high or that low, guess which one?
Yeah, but
I mean, you're going to be
DE,
following the idiot, or you're going to be following and that's what's happening. You got
DE,
90%
my
following that low standard and 10% following the higher standard.
DE, my fellow West Indian brother, you know what it is. Slackness. Okay?
Exactly.
And you say 10%, I wouldn't even put it that high. I put it at
Well, like
more at
Yep.
1%.
3 to 5%.
Yep.
Really.
Okay.
Yep.
Even three might be high. And that's harsh, but true.
Is that bad now? No.
It is 3%. So that means 97%, they're useless eaters. Yep, stop. Let me stop. I'm about to go in. I don't want to
But
get
that's
the video
look,
flagged.
what you said is in the news already. They came up with a document that specifically stated that's how many useless eaters are there on the planet. They trying to figure out what will we do with the useless eaters. They already it's in writing.
Well, we already know they're going to get it's just going to be a different form of welfare. Universal income, so they don't burn the damn house down. I mean, that's pretty much what the answer is. Um, I talked to an economist here who works, at the Pentagon about 2 3 months ago, and I mean, the guy, he knew what I was talking about. I mean, he didn't know the term. I said universal income. He never even heard of that. And then I explained it. He said, "Ah, that just sounds like the welfare system we got right now. We're just going to reallocate."
It
I
is.
mean,
Thank you. Thank you. It is. It is. It's merely a different name, but people, because bro, people are sheep. But really quick, I would just really like to veer it off for one quick second. Dr. Phoenix in the chat. Uh, bro, you can go to the U.S. Department of State. Forgive me on the exact number. Is it 91 or 92% of U.S. citizens do not own a passport? Think about that statement that you yourself made in the chat, Dr. Phoenix. Now, how many black people?
15% of Americans have passports. 15%.
Thank you.
Wow. 15%.
I stand corrected. Thank you. Thank you. I do stand corrected. So think of how many black people don't leave their own city, much less their own state. And you want people to actually get a passport and travel and see the world. And no disrespect to what any other grown man does, but if you're only going to Jamaica or the DR to go and trick, hey, if that's your thing, I'm not judging. I'm not. I swear to God, I'm not. But if that's your idea of travel, then you might as well get in your car and go down to the local hostro.
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna get us flagged,
I'm
man.
sorry, Mike. I'm sorry. I'm done. I'm muting up. I'm sorry.
Our Minister of Defense tends to be loose with the hammer. So
Minister of Defense, he's wilding. He's wilding out here.
he's like Mao Zedong, man.
Oh my goodness.
Comes back from Germany, with all the bratwurst he can take back with him, man, and some IPAs, man. I don't know how you got past U.S. Customs with that.
Because I have a U.S. passport. That's why. Born and
wait a
raised,
minute.
baby.
Wait a minute. Paul doesn't drink Hennessy? What's
What?
IPA? What is
That
that?
stuff is disgusting. What? Stuff is disgusting.
It's like drinking battery acid.
You goddamn right, bro. I drink Grey Goose, Jack Daniel, Grand Marnier. I drink the good stuff, bro. Occasionally, uh, JMO, Jameson's, and Jägermeister. But Jägermeister will put a hair on. Well, stop.
Well,
Stop. Hold on.
I don't want to laugh, but somebody in the chat, I think talking about the Beyonce and them, the conscious strippers. Somebody said that. I'm sorry, that is hilarious.
Oh
That
God.
is hilarious. I'm sorry. I don't want to call that out, but that is crazy. Who said that? Who said that? Give yourself a pat in the back. Just let me know. Shout yourself out. That was a good one.
I got grown black women at my job, man. They are part of the beehive. It's like, huh? Are you guys serious right now? Wow, it's crazy.
Also, your future teachers at the special school.
Random woman, if you could possibly move closer to your microphone, a lot closer,
Which sound like closer.
a lot closer.
I just said that those are your future teachers at your special Johnson school.
I don't know about the other. I don't know about the other brothers in the hangout, but random woman, I can barely hear you. Maybe move closer to the microphone, or
Yeah, we didn't hear that one. Go ahead, sweetheart. Hit that one again because we couldn't hear you.
yeah.
I think she typed it in the chat.
Oh, that's in the chat. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
A little better. A little better.
Okay, so I said that the conscious strippers are your future teachers at the special Johnson school.
Paul, you see what you're doing, man?
What? It's not
Paul,
me.
that's the worst. The
I'm
conscious
being
strippers.
good,
Oh my
man.
God, that was a great one. That's a classic.
I'm telling you, I'm not going in. I'm not. Mike had to cut one hanger short because of me, and I promised him never again. I'm being good. I'm trying my best.
Rating woman is normally a very calm, collected person. You know, she speaks. Today is like,
Dr. Phoenix says Raining Woman is at a CIA black site. Probably at Gitmo. Anyways, let's have some closing thoughts so we can close this out for tonight.
Okay, you know what? Honestly, I'll say I'll just say this, bro. Again, I speak on it. I speak on it. I speak on it. A lot of people are in. A lot of people. A lot of black people are intellectually disingenuous when they talk about the issues and situation of black people in America. They are intellectually disingenuous when they speak about the present condition and situation in the African nation states. Okay, so a lot of mindsets need to be changed amongst black people in America. All is mental because mental is supreme. You have it, you have the power within you to create the reality that you want to see. It starts in your mind. I'll leave it there because I can feel myself about to go in. I'm done.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
in a way, I'm like Paul. I have those extreme views, but I have to keep myself on the hopeful side, because there's one time when I walked away from the black community completely. It's only about 3 years ago. I was searching internet for something, and they suggested this channel, and I got back to YouTube, the Manosphere. But we have a problem where the youth are frustrated, just like we were frustrated in the 70s. My generation was frustrated. The youth today are frustrated. A lot of them are angry, and some of them, I mean, well, not a lot of them, but the majority of them are just, in my mind, stupid. You know, when I say stupid, I mean they don't take the time to educate themselves on anything, any level whatsoever. They just accept the junior high school um, 9-year-old view of the world, and that's the way they try to live. Um, we have to start focusing on what's going to bring us out of this angry and frustrated mode that we're running in. And a lot of people are going towards the other side of the manosphere, where people are fighting with one another, bringing out knives and threats and all that foolishness. But that's not going to solve the problem. You have to focus on getting things done. Every generation has to build a house for themselves. My generation built a house. My father built a house, and I don't want to live in my father's house, so I have to build a house myself. So my sons, they might like my house, but they don't want to live there, so they have to build a house for themselves. They can't be angry at me because I didn't build the right house for them. I gave them the knowledge to build a house, so now they have to go build a house. That's what Black America, Black Africa, wherever you are a black man, you have to do. And you have to build a house that not only you can live in, but all the other black people on the planet can live in.
Anyone else have a closing thought before we close out?
Yeah, I would just say very quickly, it's you know, I think one of the key um, phrases or words here tonight is really mindsets. That's one of the big things we really have to do, changing kind of how we think. That's one of the most difficult things that you can do with people, is change how they think. That's very difficult, but that's something that we're going to have to start to really work towards. We're going to definitely play a huge role in being a repository of good information. Um, and out of that, I believe, and we're going to have to work together and coalesce dollars. We're going to have to do that. I think that we doing this will help to change some mindsets. That's something that we're really going to have to really work on, not only here but across the pond, as you say. Paul, I think, brought up some very good points about living in Africa. I've never lived in Africa, so I haven't lived there. I've lived in South America and so forth. I have a better idea there. Living in Africa, never been there. Never. I've been, to Angola. I've been there, but I have not lived there. I didn't live there, so really getting a boots on the ground, and perspective by living there and looking at things. Those who have, those who have lived there, they seem to say very much a lot of the same stuff, and that's something that, and I see that those same issues do exist here as well with how many of us think. We have to change our mindsets to some degree, or improve them, and that's our big, over the next, I would say, 10 years. That's because we don't have a lot of time on this, but that's definitely a very big item we're going to have to I'm really tackle. And how we're going to get to that, I think, is through definite dissemination of good information, and some of the brighter crew of us working together, and those who are a bit more inclined to synergize and work together, helping to create and helping to build. Um, we might be able to advance that a little bit faster. Um, World's changing quick, and if our minds don't adapt to that, we are once again going to get left behind, and we should not be getting left behind in this generation, in these times. We shouldn't, and um, I hope we can bridge that gap. That's I'll just leave it at that. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, my final word is definitely a pleasure being on. Um, Again, I just observation and experience. I just think overall, um, the energy of urgency. I mean, at the level of, as if you're at war, because technically we really are at war. Is necessary to move things forward, um, and of course, just creating standards as high, you know, on all levels. Um, I think that's the only way, and also that everyone should understand that everyone is not going to make it, and obviously that's not the point. The point is to move forward, and those who are able and willing, they will do it, and really that's all that matters, really. Um, that's that's getting the job done, really, and then it should grow, per generation. Obviously, the beginning is going to be the toughest part, but as long as people are willing to do what it takes, I'm a realistic optimist. That's what I call myself. I'm very pragmatic, but optimistic at the same time, while seeing the negatives, and that's really all I got to say.
Rainy, when we
De, can you please stay on when we go off air? I'd like to talk to you, bro.
Okay, I'll do that.
all right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Rainy, when you have something you want to say,
Yes, can y'all hear me better?
I can barely make out what you're saying.
Can y'all hear me now?
A little better.
Excuse me. Okay, what about this?
A little better.
Oh my God.
Uh, are you on a mic or you're on speaker?
Yeah, I'm actually on a mic.
Oh, okay.
Hold
I,
on a second. Hold on.
I think it's the room that you're in. There's a lot of like the sound is maybe bouncing off the ceiling or the walls, something. I think raining woman went to go and grab a 12 pack of sticky honey buns.
Paul.
I went to go grab what? What?
Honey buns.
Oh.
Or intimate cake or something. Oh my God, Paul, you're too much. The minister of defense.
Oh my
That's
gosh,
the
you
minister.
guys. Okay, so you can hear me better now.
Perfect.
Okay, awesome. So I just want to remind everyone that Dollar Will offers trading education for stock and currency on Patreon for only $10 a month. Also, my male channel, Cool with Money, where he does cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and investing tips. Mike V offers free mentoring on cybersecurity and also business book and power with complex design and anti-gravity. And also the Black Brain Trust are not financial advisors. So CFP.net would be a recommended website for your financial advice.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
All right. Thank you for that. Please hit the like button if you have not already done so. Share the video if possible and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust and the community tab as well. That being said, we are out.